Thank you, Griotchinere, for such a brilliant workshop as ever, enlightening, educational, full of heart, and you are as humble as an individual as human beings can get. We love you and we appreciate you, and we love your work, and we are so pleased to have you as part of our team at Kuumba Nia Arts. Thank you, and keep doing the good work that you do out there in the communities. Thank you so much. Going to move on now to another element of, if you like, the storytelling part of this event. And what we want to demonstrate here really is what is something that we mentioned in our opening presentation, and that is the way that many aspects of our culture, if you like, traveled to the West and to the Caribbean via enslaved Africans through enslavement. And so I'm going to present a performer who's not just brilliant, but she is, just so talented, so knowledgeable, so informative, has so much energy, and, just brings a bright spark to everything that she does. One of those particular elements of culture that traveled over to the West and the Caribbean were the Anansi stories, which started in West Africa and ended up in the Caribbean, is very much a part of our culture. Amantha Edmead is going to present a short storytelling presentation of an Anansi story. And Amantha, over to you.
Okay. When I say welcome, you say hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Amantha, and I am going to share a story with you today. Now, this story comes from the Caribbean, and it comes from an older African tradition, but you're going to find out all about that. But first, we need to warm up. So let's roll our shoulders back, shake our arms out, and if you need to, maybe yawn and a stretch. Wonderful. Now, when I say crick, you say crack. Crick, crack, crick, crack, crick, crack. Today's story is what we call an Anansi story. Now, Anansi is a spider, but he also is a man. From the West African traditions all the way to the shores of the Caribbean, Anansi teaches us right from wrong. He shows us that small can be strong. Anansi is a spider man. He can be a trickster for bad or good. He can be a trickster for bad or good. Come down, Anansi, a trickster for bad or good. Now, this story is called Anansi and the Pot of Common Sense. Now, do you all know what common sense is? Some of you do, some of you don't. Hopefully, by the end of this story, you're going to find that out. One fine day, Anansi was up and relaxing in his home. He stretched out 3 of his 8 legs and decided to go and see what was happening with the rest of the family. He went down into his kitchen where he found Mrs. Anansi. Now, Mrs. Anansi could do anything from cook to clean to do woodwork, but Mrs. Anansi decided she was cooking a cake that day. She looked up and saw Mr. Anansi and said, "Don't just stand there, Mr. Anansi, come. I need your help. The water is not working in this kitchen. I don't tell you to fix it, but you haven't done that. So, there is still a standpipe out in the garden. Go, catch some water and bring it to me so I can finish making this cake." Now, Mr. Anansi looked down, took one of his little legs and scratched his head. In front of Mrs. Anansi, there were 3 things. There was a pot with a handle, good solid pot. There was a sieve that Mrs. Anansi was using to sieve flour. You know the sieve, it's kind of like a very thin net and the flour just go through. And there was something she had been using to, what you call? Yes, she was cleaning the vegetables. I think you call it a colander. So it kind of metal with lots of holes in. Mr. Anansi looked at these three and thought, she want me to get water from the standpipe, right? Eh? All right. So Mr. Anansi looked at these three and he picked up the sieve, went outside, said, "Morning, Brer Rabbit," turned on the standpipe. It's a tap outside in the garden, and the tap water was just running. He turned it up really high. It seemed to be taking a while for the water to get up in the sieve, but he wasn't really paying attention. Turned off the tap and walked back into the kitchen, put the sieve there and said, "There is the water there, Mrs. Anansi." Now, was there any water in the sieve? No. The sieve is full of a whole heap of holes. So, by the time Mr. Anansi had got to Mrs. Anansi, there was no water in the sieve, but there was a trail of water all the way from the standpipe to the kitchen. Mrs. Anansi looked down at her husband and said, "Mr. Anansi, what is wrong with you? I asked you to go fetch water from the standpipe. You could have picked this good pot where the water would have stayed in it. But you decide to pick up a sieve. You don't have any common sense, Mr. Anansi. And there is one thing everybody in the whole world needs to survive, and that is common sense. Just move from me." Now, Mr. Anansi had fully woken up now, because he saw that Mrs. Anansi was a little angry. He took one of his legs and scratched his head, took the other leg and scratched his head and said, "Common sense. Everybody in the whole world needs common sense. If I was to go around the whole world and gather up all the common sense that everybody has, I could keep it, and then whenever anybody needs common sense, they would have to come to me, Mr. Anansi, and I would ask them to pay for the common sense, and me, Mr. Anansi, would be rich. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. I going to take myself and my magical spinning web, go everywhere and gather up all the common sense. Now, Mr. Anansi, I got to tell you some things about Anansi, because you know he's a spider and he also is a man. But Mr. Anansi can do things that you would call magic. He can go anywhere in the world in a split second, and you could just be there like me, relaxing in your garden. Mr. Anansi appears, you just feel a slight thing just touching your neck. So common sense gone right out of your head. And that is what Mr. Anansi did. He decided to appear in Canada. You know where Canada is, yes? He went all over Canada, just grabbed up all the little common sense, put it in a little web. Then he found himself in America. North America took all the common sense. South America, all the different lands. He went to Brazil, he went to Peru, he went to Chile, he went to Paraguay. You know, yes, he went there too, and there, all of those places he went to. He found himself in China, went all the way across China, taking up all the common sense. You know somewhere in China? Yes, that is exactly where Mr. Anansi went. Before you know it, people would just feel something brush them. Common sense gone. From China, he decided to go into Russia, went all over Russia, took up the common sense. While he was there, he was feeling that he himself would do a tour of Europe. Yes! So he went down to France, to Spain, to Italy, yes, he went there as well, Portugal. Where else did he go? He went to Malta. He decided to go to what? Scandinavia. Yes, all the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway. Yes, he found himself all over Europe. Yes, he come to England too. Yep. Where were you? In Bristol? My gosh, Mr. Anansi spent a day relaxing all over Bristol. Everybody would just feel a little thing like this. common sense God. Mr. Anansi was gathering all the common sense he could. Where else hasn't he been yet? Australia, Tasmania, Papua New Guinea, all over there. Sri Lanka, India, where else are you saying? North Pole, South Pole, Africa. Mr. Anansi took himself all over Africa. How many countries now? 54. Went to each of them. He was all over the place. Mr. Anansi was there traveling. He was a real sightseer. He decided he would stop off in Ethiopia, go to Lalibela, see all of those churches. Mr. Anansi thought, have I been He forgot the Caribbean. He came back to the Caribbean, went all over the different Caribbean islands, took in Cuba, took in Jamaica, Antigua, Montserrat, St. Kitts, St. Vincent, Grenada, all of them, Martinique, Guadeloupe. Mr. Anansi scratched his head. Was there anywhere in the world he hadn't been? Where haven't I said? Yes, Mr. Anansi went there. He went there too. He went there too. Yes, everywhere. No. Mr. Anansi gathered all of the common sense. He wrapped them around in different parts of the web. But now he used his magic to put all of the common sense from all over the world into a big, big gourd, which is like a huge pot. So he decided the gourd wasn't quite big enough. So he decided to get a huge pot. So this pot, if you imagine how big Mr. Anansi is, the pot was about so big, yes? No. Mr. Anansi had all the common sense and he would just wait for people to come and buy it from him. But then he thought, hold on, where am I going to keep the common sense? If I don't put it somewhere safe, somebody could come find the common sense and take it away from me. So I'm going to hide it. Where shall I hide it? I know. I will go to the middle of the ocean. I will dive down deep, deep in the ocean, dig a big hole, hide the pot of common sense. That is exactly what Mr. Anansi did. He dug a hole, hid the common sense, and was just swimming up. And as he swam, he saw a fish. He saw 3 fishes. They'd seen where he put the common sense. They would come and take it. Mr. Anansi took up the common sense. Not there. He decided to go to the highest mountain there was. Do you know where that is? Yes, that's where he went. He got to the top of the mountain, moved some of the snow, put the common sense there, covered it up. As he was going, he looked and he saw something which looked like a bird. There was a bird who saw where he had put the common sense. He couldn't leave it there. Mr. Anansi gathered up the common sense and he thought, where could I leave it? He decided to go back to where he lived in his home on his lovely little island in the Caribbean. When no one was looking, he dug a hole and put the common sense right there under a mat. As he turned around, he looked up on the ceiling and he could see a little lizard. The lizard had seen where he put the common sense. Oh no, he dug it up. Mr. Anansi spent days going around the world hiding the common sense wherever he could. Where do you think he should hide it? Yes, he tried that. But then he turned round and he saw a fly. And the fly saw where he had hidden the common sense. In the end, Mr. Anansi found the tallest tree he could on his favorite island. And all he had to do was climb to the top of the tree and then he would hide the common sense. So, imagine you have the tree here. Mr. Anansi put the common sense right here in the big pot on top of his belly. And then he wrapped his 8 legs around the tree and started to climb. And climb. And climb. And climb. So you got the tree, the pot, Mr. Anansi climbing. Climbing, climbing. He wrapped the pot to him with his web. But he was climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. And woo, he would wipe his brow because he was hot, hot, hot. Oh, it was so hot. He got almost to the top of the tree and then he thought he could hear something. He looked down and he could see a tiny, tiny child. Couldn't have been more than 4 years old. He looked down and it sounded like the child was laughing. He heard ignored it and climbed, and he looked down and he had... Mr. Anansi could not take this child laughing anymore. Now, you know how annoying giggling can be? He thought it was annoying, but we thought it's fun. We think it's fun. Give us a laugh, a little giggle. Good. Mr. Anansi shouted down, "Little child, what you laughing for?" And the little child used his biggest voice and said, "Mr. Anansi, if you wanted to climb the tree quickly, you should have put the pot on your back. Then you could climb up more easily. You don't have any common sense." And with that, the little child gave a big laugh. Mr. Anansi was so vexed. He was angry. He took one of his legs and cut all of the webs that was holding the pot, and the pot tumbled out of the tree and smashed on the ground. And then all of the bits of common sense flew out of the pot and went all the way on the air, all the way around the world, so that everybody in the world had common sense, and everybody has common sense till this day. When I say wire bend, you say story end. Wire bend, wire bend, wire bend, story end. Now, that was the story of Anansi and the pot of common sense. A story is never just for story's sake. It's up to you what sense it makes. What does it mean? And what from this story will you take? My question to you is, can you turn to somebody and tell them what common sense is? And my extra question is, can you give an example of common sense just to the first person you meet? I think you've done really well in listening to this story today, so you should give yourself a big round of applause. It has been an honor and a joy to share the story with you. My name is Amantha, and I shall be bringing you another story soon. Take good care. Bye.
Thank you, Amantha, for just a great outdoor performance, as brilliant and as talented as ever as you are. That performance is really, really much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next presentation, and it's by a young lady that we've worked with in the past, and we look forward to working with in the future. A young lady by the name of Carol Sherman, who again is a well-traveled performer, and she hails from Bristol. And she is going to present for us a workshop, again, in the vein of an element of culture that traveled from Africa to the Caribbean. We're going to look at Kuumba dance history. And this is quite a very, very enlightening and active workshop as well. So feel free to join in because we love this workshop. It's also quite enlightening. Over to you, Carol Sherman, with a workshop entitled Kuumba History.
Kuumba is a cultural form indigenous to Jamaica. It is dance, music, ritual and song largely practiced by Jamaicans who reside in the parish of St. Thomas to celebrate special events, such as engagements, weddings, healings, births, deaths, Nine-Night and Christmas. It is used to remove the wrong kind of spirit from someone afflicted with spirit sickness, also to hold counsel with ancestral spirits. These Jamaicans from St. Thomas, like the Congo practitioners from Cuba, have retained the drumming, dancing and kept a large amount of the Congo language, rituals and ceremonies alive in Kuumba practices. According to Dr. Olive Lewin in her book, Rocket Come Over, Kuumba originated in Congo, West Africa, and was brought to Jamaica by the free Africans who arrived between the 1840s and the 1860s. The traditional elements associated with Kuumba include drummers, percussionists, singers, dancers, ancestral spirits, libation, a center pole, a silk cotton tree, animal sacrifices like goats, chickens, ritual tables, costumes. Many young people are now learning the Kuumba practice for cultural, theatrical and festival involvements. The African Caribbean Institution of Jamaica is mandated to preserve the presence of African retentions in the Caribbean, and the Jamaican Cultural Development Commission is responsible for Jamaica's Festival of the Performing Arts competition, which is held annually. Kuumba groups from different parishes like St. Mary's, St. Catherine, St. Thomas come to showcase their cultural Kuumba songs, dancing and drumming.
Hi there, my name's Carol Sherman and today we're going to look at some Kuumba moves. Today to assist me is Charlotte Sherman and she'll be doing the moves as well. First we're going to put some Kuumba music on and do a very short warm-up. Okay, so we're going to take our ankles, roll them around for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the other way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, other leg, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, change, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, now knees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, change direction, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay, hips, just wiggle them from side to side. That's it. Let's do that for 8 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And around. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Change direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The rib cage, just move that round. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And around the other way. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just shake your hands out. Shake them up. Shake them down. Shake them up. And shake them down. Okay, just last in your head. Just roll it around gently and change direction. Fantastic. So now, after that very quick short warm-up, we're going to be ready for our first move, and it is the shuffle. And during this move, generally, the queen leader of Kuumba would have a glass of water or some fire in a container on her head, and she would shuffle. So it's really important on this move that we keep the torso very still, and the shuffle comes from the legs only. We even try to keep those hips still so that whatever's on our head doesn't fall. So we're going to do that for the count of 8 and then we'll stop. So to give us a shuffle, 5, 6, 7, 8. Shuffle, 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 shuffle. 5, 6, 7, 8. Fantastic. And we're going to take that from the back of the room and shuffle forward for 2 counts of 8 with a piece of music. So get yourselves ready. 5, 6, 7, 8. Shuffle. 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't bend. 6, 7, 8. Keep very still. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fantastic. So during this, what you have to remember is that you'll have something on top of your head when you're doing that slow shuffle. So you really want to keep that torso as still as possible. Then there are people that won't have things on their head, and what they do with the shuffle is they add that knee movement. So from here, what you see is a jerk of the knee. 1, jerk up, push, push. What that looks like sideways is your knee pushes out like that. Push, push, and you go push, 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 push. So, and then let's do 8 of those, and then we'll put the music on, and then we'll travel. So let's do 8 pushes. 5, 6, 7, 8. Knee, 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 knee. Fantastic. So I'm going to put the music on and let's take that to a movement now. Let's move it. Start at the back of the hall. 5, 6, 7, 8. Knee. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fantastic. So you're going to go back to the hall. And still, what we've tried to do here, we haven't added our hips yet. It's just in the knee. Let's do that sideways so that you can see that knee. If you turn sideways, we'll do it for the count of 2 8s. And 5, 6, 7, 8. Move, shuffle. The knee. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fantastic. So we've got the shuffle that's very stiff, and then the knee, 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 knee. And within the same shuffle, you can now add the hips. So let's take a look. There's that shuffle, the knee shuffle, and now we're going to add the hip by knee, knee. Can you see the hip? Hip, hip, hip. So there's much more of a wiggle when you push that knee out. I'll just stand back from the camera. So you push the knee out and put the hips, hips. Do you want to have a go with me? We'll do it for the count of 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. Hips, 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 hips. Don't forget that you're also pushing out the knee. Push the knee. Hips, 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 hips. Yes, so it is very different because now we're beginning to really dance with that shuffle. Let's do it for the count of 8 with some music. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, let's take the same move and go back. 5, 6, 7, 8. Hip. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's good. And the next move that we're going to look at. We've done the straight, the leg, the hip, and now we're going to add the shoulders. Again, we want this torso area to be very upright. So in isolation, without the rest of the body, let's just take those shoulders forwards and back. We're trying not to use the rib cage, but just the shoulders. And the hands can kind of be round here, and then back, you have your hands up, like this. Forwards, back, forwards, back. Trying to isolate just the shoulders and not the ribs. Let's do it for the count of 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we're putting in with the step with the hips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How did you find that? Good? Fantastic. So let's take that on a little trip around. Let's take it for the 2 counts of 8. I'm going to start at the back here. I'm going to travel diagonally with that. Remember, no rib cage yet. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, let's do that one again. It's important in this move that we stay upright, 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 and put those hips in. Shoulders, shoulders, shoulders. Let's travel 8 forwards and 8 back. You ready? Okay. So we're going to go on the diagonal again. First 8 forwards and the next 8 back. Let's do it. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Keep upright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very nice. So now we've done the ordinary shuffle, the knee with the shuffle, the hips with the shuffle, and now we're going to take that shoulder move and bring it right down on the down and up on the up. So it looks like this side. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And forwards, it looks like this. 5, 6, 7, 8. Down, up, down, up, down. And it's still just in the shoulders. We're not encompassing the complete rib cage. Let's do it together. Get ready. 5, 6, 7, 8. Down, up, down, up. 3, up. 4, up. 5, up. 6, up. 7, up. 8, up. Fantastic. Take a breather. Whew. Nice. Get yourself a drink of water if you need to. And back. Good. So now, in that move, we're going to incorporate here the rib cage. So I'll just turn the music off for this one. So before we were doing shoulder, shoulder, down, up. Now we want to put a really snap in the rib cage as well. So here we're going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So the rib cage is snapping back. Snap, 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 snap. See that rib cage move? We want to add that into it. So it would go 5, 6, 7, 8. Snap, 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 snap. With that rib cage as well as the shoulders. Let's do it with some music. We'll try and do it for 8. Let's go. On the spot. 5, 6, 7, 8. Snap. Up, 2, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Fantastic. Now, with that move, we're going to try to travel 4 of those moves. 1, up, 2, up, 3, up, 4, up, to the left, and then we'll take the next 4 to the right. Let's see. And when we're traveling, we're 1, move, 1, move. So when you're upright, you take a step to the side. So it would look like this. Down, move, move. Down, move, move. All right, to the side. Let's do 4 to the left and see how we get on. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, move, 2, move, 3, move, 4, move. Yes. We'll take that same movement and this time go to the right. 5, 6, 7, 8. Down, right, down, right, down, right. Last one, down, right. Woo. You're good, I like you. Okay, so now we're going to introduce, we've done the feet, the knee, the hip, the shoulder, the rib cage, and now we're going to put some arms in. I'm going to stretch out, do to the basic shuffle. 1, 2, 1, centre. 1, 2, 1, centre. So we'll take those arms out to the left on the count of 2 and back for the count of 2. And using the basic shuffle. 1, 2, back, 2. 1, 2, back, 2. And we'll do that 4 times. Are you ready, Charlotte? Let's join in. And we'll move forwards with each move. 5, 6, 7, 8. Left, 2, centre, 2. Left, 2, centre, 2. Left, 3, centre, 2. Left, 4, centre, 2. Fantastic. And this time we'll do this. 1, 2, centre, 2. 1, 2, centre, 2. 1, 2, centre, 2. 1, 2, centre, 2. So the arms are going 1, 2, centre, 2. 1, 2, centre, 2. 1, 2, centre, 2. 1, 2, centre, 2. Fantastic. Let's travel with that. Are we ready? Go right back. That's it. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, down, 2. Right, 2, down, 2. Left, 2, down, 2. Right, 2, down, and back. 1, 2, centre, 2. Back, 2, centre. Hup, hup. Hup, hup. Hup, hup. Hup, hup. Oh, nice. Really, really nice. I can see that we are beginning to truly do Kuumba Nia. And now we're going to take those arms and bend down with it. So we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So the move looks like this. 1, so it's still the same. 1, 2. Let's have a go. Start at the back of the room. 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Fantastic. Woo, woo. Now, let's start with a spin. We're going to do a spin with our arms out, quite low, with a count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, this is quite relaxed spin with our arms just out. No embellishments yet. Let's have a go. 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fantastic. We're going to take that very relaxed spin with our hands down to the right this time. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now when we go round, we're going to shuffle our hands. Can you just shuffle your hands? Shuffle your hands like that. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And we're going to do that on the 8 counts. We take to go round. And 5, 6, 7, 8. Shuffle. Spin, 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 spin. Yes. Really loving that. Our last move for today is we're going to do a rising up to the sun and back down to the earth spin on the count of 8, and it will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we take our hands, you can do this with me. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, down. Alright? On the spin. Let's do that once more on the spot so we hear. Put a little shuffle with it. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and drop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, drop. And this time we're going to do that on the spin. Get ready? 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn. 1, 2, 3, and drop. Back. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, drop. Oh, yes. That was fantastic. Now, that was our first session, introducing you to some moves with Kuumba Nia, sorry. So, go off and practice them, and let's come back again and create routines. But now, bye from me, Carol Sherman, and bye from Charlotte Sherman. Have a lovely time. Welcome to Kuumba Nia. Bye.
Thank you, Carol, for such a wonderful workshop. I love the energy, I love the detail, the clarity. And again, as John has said, it really echoes traditions from the past which have traveled to still be represented as traditions of today. And I was here doing the shoulder moves, but I would suggest nobody copy me, but to really go back over that workshop again and again if you need to, and to just get involved and try those movements and try that dance and find out more. We're going to continue in the vein of having another very interactive workshop. Our next our next workshop is run by a practitioner who we consider to be a great colleague of ours. It's run by Akulah Agbami, and Akulah is going to be looking at poetry and how we create and form poetry. And she's going to take us through a step-by-step workshop using different techniques. Now, this one, if you go to the drop-down menu, we have got links for you to follow. I think there's video footage for you to look at. So please, as you go through, do take the time to pause and try each of the exercises. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Akulah, and I know that you are going to enjoy this. So Akulah, over to you.
Everyone, my name is Akulah Agbami and I am a Black poet. So welcome to my 30-minute poetry course. I suppose you could say that this course is for everyone, but I am letting you know in advance that kind of the material that I'm going to be drawing upon will definitely be of interest to people of African and Caribbean origin. That's kind of where my focal point is. And this course, of course, is for people who have already written poems or people who are starting out and writing a poem for the first time. I cannot be passionate enough about poetry. If I could, I'd spend all day, every day, sitting and writing and kind of making sense of the world and capturing different stories through my poems. So what is poetry? Well, when I'm in a classroom with young people or when I'm in a community group, I always start my sessions by talking about the origins of the word poetry. So the word poetry comes from the Greek, the ancient Greek, poesis, which is a kind of word used, a verb often used to describe sculpting, so creating something out of nothing, kind of sculpting, carving, using our hands to create something out of nothing. And I think that's a really, really good image for what we do with poetry. We pluck things out of thin air. So in the course of my 30-minute Black Poetry course, I'll be giving you some simple recipes for producing poems, for you, enabling you to pull poems out of thin air. So there are a few tricks to the trade. And trick number one is best not to write a poem cold. So generally, when I'm going to be doing some writing, I always do a warm-up exercise. So I'm going to be inviting you to do, well, a number of different warm-up exercises and a number of different exercises in the course of this presentation. But we're going to start out with ourselves. Lots and lots of poets use the stuff of their own lives and their own personal experiences to produce poetry. And that is a pretty obvious starting point. So I'm going to ask you for the next 10 minutes to think about yourself. Describe yourself. Imagine you're somebody else looking in, so just looking on. So describe yourself, where you're sitting, how you look, what you're wearing, where you bought the clothes you're wearing, any kind of little histories to the items that you're wearing. But then go deeper, go inside and say how you're feeling right now. Connect with your emotions, connect with the thoughts that are kind of really uppermost in your mind. And then I want you also to write your view of the world, a little window of your view of the world. We'll be coming back to windows on the world in the rest of our session, but maybe jot down 2 things that are really upsetting you right now, and then 2 things that are bringing you joy. So that's it. So write about yourself, what you're wearing, how you look, then go inside yourself, how you're feeling, your emotions and the thoughts that are occupying your mind, and then think about the world, not just you, but you in the world, and 2 things that are annoying you right now and 2 things that are bringing you joy. Get writing. See you in 10 minutes. welcome back. You've just completed your first free writing experience, and that was just writing, just to get you into the mood for writing. So anything that came to mind is perfectly acceptable. In fact, anything you write in the course of this session will be great. So don't worry about the quality of your writing. Don't start criticising your writing in advance. Just let it flow, let it flow, let it flow. How do poets produce poetry, and where does it come from? Well, I can tell you that I find I write much better poetry after I've read. So I will often read other people's poetry for 20, 30 minutes, half an hour, and then I'll go into my own writing. So I am going to read you one of my poems, and I'll read it to you, and I just want you to let it kind of float over you. Maybe listen to the sound of the words, try and capture little segments of it, but also as you're listening to it, when we encounter art, we always bring ourselves to that process. So you're going to also be kind of co-creating even as you are just listening to the poem. So just see what happens as you listen to this poem. The poem is entitled Your Swimming Pool. So if any images come to mind, anything you want to jot down, just jot it down, and then I'll give you your first poetry task after this. So my poem's called Your Swimming Pool. Somehow, as I sweep up the leaves by your swimming pool, retribution is shaken down. Somehow, as I sweep into tiny, neat piles the leaves by your swimming pool, retribution is shaken down. Somehow, as I sweep into tiny, neat piles the leaves by your swimming pool, pick up the clothes you toss carelessly to the ground, retribution is shaken down. Somehow, as I sweep into tiny, neat piles the leaves by your swimming pool, pick up the clothes you toss carelessly to the ground, dust off the chaise longue, carry into the kitchen the cocktail debris, retribution is shaken down. Somewhere, as I sweep into tiny, neat piles the dead leaves of your swimming pool, pick up the clothes you toss every day to the ground, dust off the chaise longue you have lounged in for hours, scurry backwards and forth to the kitchen with the food and the drink you have wasted once more. Retribution is shaken, and your Art Deco lamp, by the slip of my trembling hand to start somewhere, comes crashing and splintering down. So that's my swimming pool poem. It's a poem that I wrote the first time I travelled to South Africa, and I remember I was in a plane and I was looking out, and I'd never seen so many swimming pools in my life. As you're coming into Johannesburg, you kind of fly over this residential area, and every garden's got a swimming pool, and I just found that notion of such obvious wealth juxtaposed with, you know, all too obvious poverty. It just made me very angry, and I directed some of that anger into my poem, and I'm sure that you'll have picked that up. So that is my swimming pool poem, and for your first poem, I'd like you to create a 4-line poem, and it's a poem on the theme of swimming pools. So I want you to write a poem with no more than 5 words. And one of the things when you're starting to write poetry, or even if you're a more experienced poet, it's really good to limit your word length. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But it gives the word more potency if you have short lines. So I'd like you to write a 4-line poem, 5 words per line, on the subject of swimming pools. It could be your first experience of a swimming pool. I remember mine. I was a hopeless swimmer to start off with, and I remember being terrified during my first experience of a swimming pool. In fact, I got hysterical. But yeah, or it could be your latest trip to a swimming pool, or it could be, you know, how you feel about swimming pools in general, or some incident that has occurred at a swimming pool. Swimming pools, the theme of your first poem. I will give you 10 minutes to write it, and remember that a poem can rhyme, but it doesn't have to. And sometimes very obvious rhymes make a poem weaker. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Hi everyone, so well done, you have got a poem. I would suggest that you read it out loud. Just read it out loud, and you may be able to pick up on any kind of irregularities or areas where the poem's kind of has become itself hesitant, or is a bit, you know, has got this kind of heavy weight. And in which case I would say maybe think about replacing a word. When I'm writing, I always use a thesaurus. So I cannot write my poetry without a thesaurus, because a thesaurus is like the spice you bring to your poetry. It's the flavour you give your poetry. So every single word in a poem should be doing something. And by using a thesaurus, you can really intensify the language you use. So if you are writing a poem that merely consists of 20 words, as I've just asked you to do, you know, it's great to get words that have a lot of power and energy in them. Okay, going back to my swimming pool poem then, you will have noticed that it's a poem that is filled with repetition. I repeat the lines somehow, and then as I sweep into tiny neat piles, or somehow as I sweep up the leaves. So there's this introduction to each verse which begins with somehow as I sweep up the leaves, and then I expand upon it as the poem continues to kind of indicate that the maid whose voice we hear, who is the narrator of this poem, is getting more and more bogged down by the work she has to do, and that's indicated in little details like the additions I bring into each that introductory section. So the idea of repetition is really important for poetry, and in a poem we can repeat one word, we can repeat a phrase, we can repeat one line, we can repeat a few lines. Generally when we're writing prose, repetition is to be avoided, but when we're writing a poem, repetition really builds the poem. It adds strength. It's like the pillars of a poem, so it really reinforces a poem. So in your next poem, I'm going to ask you to experiment with repetition. Listen again then to my use of repetition at the beginning of your swimming pool. Somehow, as I sweep up the leaves by your swimming pool, retribution is shaken down. Somehow, as I sweep into tiny neat piles the leaves by your swimming pool, retribution is shaken down. Okay, so you can see that I've changed it already between verses 1 and verse 2. So I am going to ask you to look at the photo, look at the painting, which is resource material 1 in your resources pack. Okay, and I want you to try and find a refrain for that image. So here are a few very rough examples, and I know you'll be able to do much better than that. So it's a beautiful piece of art by a woman from what used to be known as Swaziland, and we call it Eswatini. So she's a painter called Findili Mamba, And this is one of her paintings that I'm asking you to observe. So here are a few of the refrains you might use in this poem, for this poem. But hungrily the fox awaits. Her hands are softer, larger, stronger than the world. Watch me, the snakes will not bite. Nestle in my arms. So just a few suggestions. You can play around with that, and of course you can come up with your own. I am going to ask you to write a 12 to 14 line poem, and making sure that up to 3 lines are the refrain, which can occur in your poem 2 or 3 times. And I'm going to ask you to allow yourself 15 minutes to produce this poem. I always find it helpful to put a time limit on something, and to also have the kind of framework within which we're working. So you're going to be writing a poem that is experimenting with repetition, using the idea of a refrain, and you have up to 14 lines, and I'm giving you 15 minutes. So I will see you shortly. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. So we have looked at repetition, and we have looked, or we've touched upon rhyme. Random is another R word that I associate a lot with poetry, and I use the notion of random all the time to create poems. I'm going to ask you to come up with 5 random words to do with water. These are my 5, but you can come up with something completely different. So 5 random words to do with water. I came up with splash, hail, teardrop, pond, and cup of tea. That is 5. Yeah, those were my random words. Okay, I want you to take each of the words, put them in the middle of a page, and do a kind of mind map around them. Come up with associations. So if with the word splash, that I then came up with, can't find it. I came up with splishing through the puddle. You make a splash, jumping into everyone. Okay, and then with the word hail, I came up with hail scratches like a cat, or hail blue scarf wrapped in hail. So I'm just developing lots of ideas associated with those words. That's what I want you to do. So that's stage 1. Once you've done that, moving on to stage 2. I want you to take the 3 lines that I give you, and you can adapt them a little bit, but keeping the sense of these words. So the first word is, the first line is my grandmother drinks. The second line is the rug twists. The third line is why is the dusk so smeared? These 3 lines, my grandmother drinks, the rug twists, why is the dusk so smeared? So what I want you to do is create a poem. So you look at your random associations with water and you pluck a few out, and I'm going to ask you to make a 14-line poem, bringing in some of these ideas, but also incorporating the 3 lines that I have given you, or the ideas behind those 3 lines, to pull together a piece of poetry. This is what I came up with, but I'm sure, as again, you'll be able to do something at least as good, if not better. This is called In Her Eyes. The rug twists, and still you splishing through the puddle. The puddle is a mirror, glinting time, and all the while the hail assails my blue scarf. I knitted it, flecked in hail. Hail scratches like a cat, asleep beside a fire. And I, the grandmother, sipping thick brown gravy tea. Where did all the water come from? For the teardrops in her eyes. Why is the dusk so smeared? So that is my random water poem that I've just written here. You'll be able to see that. I've just scribbled it up now. Have a go. Again, take 15 minutes and see, well, actually you might need 20 minutes to see where that activity takes you. So good luck with your writing. Read it out loud when you've finished. So well done for completing 3 poems. This is these are the instructions for poem number 4. Watch the read dance from the YouTube clip, which is in your resource pack. Watch poem 4. Watch the read dance from the YouTube clip for maybe 4 minutes. It lasts about 11 minutes, but just watch 4 minutes of it. Right, so for this poem, you have 27 words to capture the movements, the costumes, the rhythm, the energy, and I'd like you to stick to 3 words per line. When you do a poem which only has 3 words in a line, it creates a really interesting rhythm. So I want you to be exploring that in this poem. So 3 words per line, see where it takes you, and make sure that every single word is doing something. So I want you to produce a 9-line, 3-word poem, so 27 words in total. Summing up your response to the read dance. You could write it from the point of view of one of the dancers. You could be somebody in the crowd looking on. You could be somebody producing the music, but let's have an experience of the reed dance. Okay, that is poem number 4. So well done for writing 4 poems in the course of my Intro to Poetry course, Black Poetry. Poem number 5. There are some what we call poetic devices. So, you know, the most obvious is simile and metaphor, but there are loads of others. So I'm going to just, with very limited time, let's think about simile and metaphor. So simile, in the poem, the water poem that I read to you, I said the hail scratches like a cat. And so like a cat is what scratches like a cat, hail scratches like a cat. That's a simile. We're comparing something and we're using the word like. So like or as allows us to create a simile. In my swimming pool poem, the word swimming pool was a metaphor. The swimming pool represented a white privileged word. So it was working as a metaphor. So I'm going to ask you to do another random exercise in preparation for poem 5. So if you could jot down your 5 favourite adjectives or describing words, and I've jotted down mine. This is what I came up with. So mine are tender, I love that word. Tumultuous, I love that word too, lovely word. Tumultuous, lots of U sounds. Huddled, another word with a U sound as the vowel sound. Then I like replete, and I like the word sweetened. So those are the 5 that came to mind when I made myself do this random exercise. Okay, so you've got 5 adjectives or describing words. Now I want you to come up with 5 favourite objects, 5 things that kind of you really, really like. And again, my random choice was a necklace, a storm. Yeah, I'm somebody who really likes storms. I love the energy of storms. A toddler, a cauliflower curry, and a patchwork quilt. So when you've got your list of 5 favourite objects and you've got your list of 5 adjectives, I want you to match them up, but in a totally random way. So this is what I came up with. Tender as a patchwork quilt, tumultuous as cauliflower curry, huddled as a storm, replete as a toddler, and sweetened as a necklace. So you may find a particular energy, as kind of a story energy when you bring those ideas together. So, for example, the tumultuous as cauliflower curry, I get a story from that. I imagine somebody going completely mad with the chili, and there's a reason why they want to make this really ultra spicy cauliflower curry because they're feeling really, really angry with their partner. So the cauliflower curry is a statement in itself. So this tumultuous as a cauliflower curry, yes, I get a story with that. Tender as a patchwork quilt, I get a story with that. It reminds me of when my first child was born, and I spent ages stitching together this patchwork quilt for the baby, you know, the cot for the baby. So for me, that brings up another lovely story. Replete as a toddler, again, lots of images and lots of stories come to mind. So what we get with a simile is this really condensed form of narrative, and I want you to play around with your own narrative, but not for too long. So I'm going to ask you, this time I'm giving you 30 words. So I want you to, in your next poem, to bring in one or two of the similes and tell us a story, a strange story in 10 lines. You know, don't be too hard on yourself. Just go with it. Just try. You can't make mistakes with poetry. You can't get it wrong. Every single line is a line of learning. Okay. Stop. You have produced 5 poems so far. I've got a few more suggestions, but very little time. So I hope that what I say makes sense. So we started out by saying that poetry comes from the Greek word about carving, pulling things out of thin air. Poetry can do all kinds of different things. It can be in praise of something. It can be a complaint. It can be a lament. It can express deep sadness. It can be a call to arms. There's a poem for every occasion, every situation in life. And there is no limit to, poetry is infinite. There is no limit to the different forms of poetry. Of course we can use verses. Of course we can use rhyme. Of course we rely on rhythm and repetition. But combinations of lots and lots of different elements bring in something entirely different. We're going to do a poem, a praise poem. So I want you to be thinking about somebody who's really important in your life. I'll read you one of my poems first of all, and then I'll give you a few more instructions. So I'm just trying to kind of look, just like this poem as I read it, you know, sort of drip over you. It's called Untitled. You walk, and other women watch you walking. It has something to do with the grace of your neck, the swing in your arms, and the lift to your step. It has something to do with the flight in your heart. Of course, some would say, who is this black woman, that she should raise her eyes to the sun and be free and be proud? Who is she that captures the flickering leaves, swaying of flowers, and the shine and the shock of the waves? She's one not to be shaken by. She's one not to tangle with. She's one to be wary of. She's one to be watched. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to write your own praise song and be very aware of the sound of the words. I chose my words with care for that poem. I wanted to have a particularly soft effect, and I wanted people to be able to see the images that I was conjuring up. So the kind of words, the repetition of words beginning with a W, she's one to be watched, one and watched, that kind of repetition helped me create the mood that I wanted. So pay attention to the vowel sounds, to a bit of alliteration, to onomatopoeia in your poem. Okay, so that is, for this poem then, you have up to 12 lines and no more than 4 words per line to write your praise song. And I will see you in 15 minutes for the final segment of this session. So well done. You have managed to produce 6 poems, which is pretty amazing. Final few words of wisdom from me. Poetry is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And, you know, I'm never at a loss for finding a subject to write poetry about. I find poetry in the emails that I receive. When we kind of pull out a few words, a phrase, or a few lines from somebody else's writing and incorporate that into our poem, we call that a found poem. So I use found poetry quite a lot, and I'm going to invite you for your last poem to explore the whole realm of found poetry. So as I was saying, I sometimes kind of pull out phrases or lines from my emails, or I just open a book at random and pull out a few phrases. For this exercise, I'm going to read you, this is one of my children's books, I'm going to read you the first page, and then I'm just going to open this book on sculpture. I do have a bit of a thing about sculpture. I'm just going to open that book at random and read a couple of lines. You can use the stuff I read on the first page of my children's book to help you create your poem, or you can just go off, grab a couple of books of your own and start working. So this is how it goes. The sunrise was the flesh of fresh mango, soft orange light swishing across the sky. Like the friendly flames of a sandy cove fire, it tickled the bright yellow bricks of the Sugar Cane Corner restaurant. This was dusty, sleepy, inner city Leeds on a Saturday morning before the bustle and rush round began. Ring went a frog-shaped alarm clock in a room right at the top of the yellow building. Ruby awoke immediately from her snuggly sleep and walloped her hand down on the button. She didn't want her mum to wake up yet. That would ruin everything. Just pulling a page at random and reading what I have come across. Both silicone and vinyl moulds can be filled with a variety of materials. Plaster, cement, resins and casting paper. They do not need a parting agent and can be reused many times if care is taken when they are peeled from the cast. Okay, well, I know that I can make poetry from what I've just read you, and I know that you probably can too. So bear in mind the length of your lines, bear in mind using a thesaurus to inspire you. And I can't encourage you enthusiastically enough to kind of dive into the massive universe of Black poetry. There are so many amazing poets out there. I'll be listing a few poets that I would strongly encourage you to read and adding some additional materials. So the instructions that I gave you for poems 1 to 6 you can then reuse on the other materials. So I'd just like to thank you for joining me for my introduction to Black poetry in 30 minutes. Hope you've had a really great time and you've been super creative, and you never know, I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akulah. Brilliant workshop, and thanks for kind of opening up the nuances, really, the ins and outs of performance poetry. Really appreciated. Thank you. And that's it. Thank you for attending our Black Theatre Development Workshop weekend for this year. And hopefully, we hope you've enjoyed everything that you've seen and heard. Hope that you've managed to get yourself involved. This is online, so feel free to revisit our workshop anytime you want to. Thanks again, and we hope you enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Well, not only do we hope you enjoyed it, we'd love to hear from you. So please, one of the essential parts of the work that Kuumba Nia Arts does is speaking with anybody who's involved with our work, really, be they audience, be they participants. So we want to hear from you what your thoughts and feelings on this are. So feel free to contact us. The details are going to come up at the end, but just contact us through the website, which is www.kuumbaniaarts.com. So, as John has said, we've come to the end of this, but don't be a stranger, follow us, and also revisit this. So for now, it's just goodbye from me.
And bye from me. Thank you.
And thank you for your time, your energy, and a big thank you to all of the practitioners. None of this could have happened without them, and none of this can happen without you. Take good care.